attached to his body. It seemed that his body and his physical rib cage seemed to be very small. And I remember, reacting to the tremendous look of suffering that Baba had. He was in intense pain and intense suffering. And that was also a lesson that Baba taught me, which I'll discuss in just a minute. But one thing that happened to me while Baba embraced me is that he kissed me, and at the time when he kissed me, I experienced this tremendous scent, this aroma that seemed like a cologne or a perfume, and I thought to myself, this is the most magnificent perfume that I've ever smelled, and I wonder if Baba uses some kind of aftershave or something. Maybe I'll find out what his brand is, because this is better than anything I've ever smelled. And I discovered later that Baba had a natural odor to him that was unique to him. And in fact, one time when I was talking with Mani, she said that the Mandali used to love to do his laundry when Baba gave them dirty laundry, because they would even put it in their face because it smelled so fragrantly. And after Mani said that, I recalled those memories that I had of Baba and how sweetly even his physical body smelled, and it was really a divine and gorgeous smell. And so I sat, and one of the, bones that I've always had to pick with God is that no matter what religion you want to look at life through, whether it's, the Christian theory or the Judaic theory or, the whole theory about reincarnation and karma, and anything that puts a responsibility on man for all the suffering that happens in the world, that never seemed to satisfy me, because I felt somehow, that there was more to human suffering than the fact that, people are inhuman and they have a capability for evil and they cause each other suffering, and if they'd only become good and spiritual, then it'd be a wonderful world, and it's not God's fault, and He really wants us to be good, but we can't, and it's our fault, so we have to suffer, and all this. Well, it really bothered me, because it was impossible for me to reconcile my image of God as good and loving with the suffering, because I always felt, why did He create the world? Why doesn't He intervene? Why doesn't He do something? Why does He permit all this suffering to go on? I realized that Baba gave me an answer, although it was not a discourse or a verbal answer or an intellectual answer, but I realized that in his suffering. And as best as I can put it into words, it is something like this. You're right. I am God, I did create the world, and in the ultimate sense, although suffering here may be your karma, and in some intermediate way you may be responsible, in the ultimate sense, I did will it. But I am not a God who sits apart from the world and watches you suffer. I am not a cruel voyeur. I am God, and I am in the midst of all the suffering of the world. And to show you, I take this body and I take upon myself more suffering than any of you have ever experienced, and I continually do that. And I am God, and this is simply part of my creation, and this is what I choose to do. And it is a fact, and this is the way it is. But I want you to know that as God, I suffer in your suffering, and I take your suffering upon me, and this is part of my creation. And you must live with it and accept it as such. And your job is not to figure out in the ultimate sense why there is suffering, but to be able to face suffering bravely, cheerfully, and constructively. And there again, Baba was the ultimate example, because in the midst of pain, Baba was intensely cheerful, lively, never complained a single instant while I was there, and yet it was obvious that he was in intense pain and intense suffering, completely concentrated on what was right for me and in trying to help me, and provided a magnificent example of what he's always saying, that you should always be cheerful even in the midst of great suffering, and you should accept your suffering and work with it and grow from it. Because even in the midst of what was an obvious physical wreck, and Baba looked broken and suffering and completely debilitated by the work that he'd been doing. There was a consciousness that permeated the room and suffused everything, and it was a real example of, Jesus having the resurrection. You can destroy the body, and Jesus, gave this example for eternity, but the spirit, the soul, the real you lives on, and it sort of gloriously rises even from the ashes of the wrecked physical body. And Baba was living proof of that, because there was so much love and so much joy and so much God in that room, despite a wrecked physical body. So Baba did not waste any time. There were no hemming and hawing and how do you do. It was almost as if, I've known you, I've known you for a long time, I feel completely comfortable with you, we don't need to bother with the first, second, third, and fourth levels of introduction, we'll do away with those completely, and we'll get right down to where it's at. So Baba just embraced me, I sat down, and Baba started gesturing. And for the first moments of Baba's gesturing, I really was entranced by Baba's gestures and what he was doing, but I thought that since, the words were coming from Eruch, that I should look at Eruch, because I thought, I had this preconception that the essence of what Baba was going to do was in his words, and not in Baba himself, not in his presence, his love, his being. And that's something that I learned from Baba. The essence of Baba is Baba. There's a marvelous story in C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce where this former clergyman comes up to heaven and he says, hey, well, down on earth we used to have these great talks about religion and philosophy and God and all this, and don't you have sermons up here? Don't you have talks? And one of the angels says, we don't have sermons and talks. We have God. We look at God. We walk with God. We enjoy God. And that was exactly it. I mean, the essence of Baba is not his words and the intellectual content of what he did. It's his love. It's him. Because there's so much love in Baba and so much joy that you would never have to say a doggone thing or have any conversation as such with Baba, but to be with him and to be in his presence forever and ever is the happiness of life and the joy of life. It's not in the intellectual content of what goes on between the master and the disciple. And that was a lesson. That's a lesson which I was learning then and I'm still learning now. So at a certain point in the interview, Baba, said, look at me, focus on me, because that's what the lover needs to do, is focus on the master, and not on the words that are coming through the translator, because the translator is nothing, and the avatar is everything. So I learned that lesson, and Baba's first question was, did I know of Richard Alpert? Richard Alpert was a professor who's now a guru, and at that time he was intensely involved in LSD research and in psychedelics and seeing what they could do, and he was convinced at that time, although he may not be now, that psychedelics had a contribution to make in the spiritual life. And Baba was having correspondence with him and saying, no, psychedelics did not. And this was during the time, 66, of Baba's intense involvement in the whole drug question, writing letters to Alan Cohen and Robert Dreyfus and Rick Chapman saying, please give talks, please tell the young people drugs are nowhere, they're a distraction, they're not spiritual, and so forth. So I said yes, I did know of Richard Alpert, and I couldn't figure out why in the world Baba would ask me about Richard Alpert. I felt I had 5 minutes. Well, why didn't Baba make the most of them? I mean, he could correspond with Richard Alpert, for the rest of Kingdom Come, but why did he have to bring Richard Alpert into my 5 minutes? I mean, and I also felt somewhat pious because, maybe a year before that or 9 months before that, I had decided that drugs were not good, and so I had just stopped taking any kinds of drugs, and so I thought that was a dead issue with me. Well, why bring up Alpert? I'm not involved with him, I'm not involved with drugs, and so on and so forth. Why are we wasting time? Then Baba said that he'd gotten a letter from Alpert, and Alpert had said, that he was not going to take drugs anymore. And Baba just radiated. He said, this really made him happy. And there was so much love coming from Baba, and I was really overwhelmed, not only by how much love Baba had for this particular individual, but for the fact that he was not taking drugs. And for anybody who's ever done any drug work or has been involved in drugs, I can just say from my own experience that I have rarely seen, or I've never seen anybody radiate that much love and happiness about somebody else's giving up drugs as I did about Baba. He was intensely, joyously happy, and it gives a sliver of an insight into how deeply Baba cares about the drug problem and how happy it would make Baba to have people stop taking drugs because he really hurts for all the people who are taking drugs. And so, that overwhelmed me. But then the tricky thing that Baba did, and, I think if you went back, read the Gita, read about Rama, read the Bible, there's an example about Jesus seeing the woman in the well. And she starts talking to him, and Jesus starts telling her things about her life, and she gets really impressed. And Adi's told stories about this, and Sarosha's told stories about this, about how Baba would just sit them down when they thought they were fooling him, and he would just say, 30 years ago, you did this, this, and this, and Baba wasn't there. He would have no way of knowing except that, of course, he's omniscient, and he would say, this person was in the room, and you said this, and you did this, and the whole memory would come back to them. And Baba was just showing them, and I'm sure this is a favorite avataric trick. Look, you can't put anything over on me. I know everything about you. I think Darwin Shaw once said that one of the first things Baba said is, I've loved you for ages, or something like that, or I've known you for ages, or you've been loving me for ages, and that Darwin had the feeling that, Baba just cut through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and that he knew exactly what he was doing all the way past. And that's exactly the feeling I had. Baba said, don't take drugs. I had never told Baba that I had taken drugs, and I didn't want to, but Baba was just telling me, I know what you've done. I know all the rotten stuff, I know the good stuff, I know the stuff that you'd be ashamed to tell me. So get it out of your mind that I don't, because I know every single thing that you think or do. So you're going to have to live with that. It's not a matter of your choosing to tell me. I already know. You can't fool God, and this is the reason that he hates hypocrisy. He already knows what you think and what you feel and who you are. So to put someone on who knows what you think and feel and are doing is hypocrisy, because he knows that you don't really think those things and feel those things. So why pretend? There's only one way to be with Baba, and that's complete honesty. And another thing that Baba was showing me in this little tiny example is there's only one thing to do with him, and that is to trust him, because he was showing me that, I'm not giving you a chance to select the things that you're going to entrust to me, because I already know them. So just go ahead and trust me, because I won't hurt you. Because at that moment I felt that even though I was spiritually naked in front of Baba, he knew every single thing that I was doing, that he would never hurt me, that he loved me, that he would support me, and that he would take care of me, and that it was all right to give everything that I had, even the weaknesses, even the rotten stuff, to him, because he knew exactly what to do with it and he could take care of it. So that was a great lesson to learn. And it's a lesson that Baba taught in a fraction of a second. It's just an experience that one has, that his essence, his being is love. And because his essence is love, he can't hurt you. It's something that he can't do. Your automobile can't fly. It's not built to fly. It's not made to fly. There's no way that it can fly. And there's no way that Baba can hurt. He may do surgery. He may teach lessons. He may make you transparent. He may humiliate you. But he can't hurt you. Not really, because he's made of love, and there's no way that he can hurt you. So Baba was teaching this. So then Baba said, where's Diana? And Diana had elected not to come with me. And I thought, well, why is Baba asking about her? She didn't want to come, and why? Let's leave her out of it. And so I said, well, I came alone, and she went back to work. And so, Baba said, that's good. And in telling me that, he was showing me Just because someone isn't a Baba lover, and just because someone I know or you know finds out about Baba and doesn't elect to become a Baba lover, doesn't mean that Baba doesn't love them. And doesn't mean that Baba doesn't think about them. Baba's God, and he thinks about everybody, and all his children are his, and he loves all his children. And there is never any way that he won't love all of his children. But then Baba said to me, but you are the more fortunate, because I was able to be in the presence of the avatar and experience his presence and his love. But simply because all of us in this room are so fortunate to be Baba lovers, in no way will ever mean that Baba doesn't love every child of his in the whole universe, and hope for that child to be one with God, because every child is part of Baba. And that was Baba's way of whittling down what in me could potentially be spiritual ego. Oh, I'm a Baba lover and I got spiritual and all this. But that's not the way it is from the Master's point of view. And that's something very important to remember in relating to every other person that we meet in life, is that Baba loves them and Baba is in them. And we should always respect that of other people and in other people, that Baba loves them. So then Baba said, well, had he heard of, did I cross paths with Robert Dreyfus? And no, I said that I didn't. And I was really getting irritated because I thought in 5 minutes we should either do one of two things. Baba should tell me, the most profound truths in the universe and condense them all so that I would know them, and then I could obviously go around when I went back to home and say, well, I know what the 5 most profound truths of the universe are because Baba told me in 5 minutes, and here they are. And I was also expecting, real personal attention in the sense that, well, now you have the following 10 hang-ups, and you have the following 10 decisions, so here are the 10 things you do about the hang-ups, and here are the 10 things you do about the decisions, and that'll take care of the rest of your life, and you won't have any problems, and I've solved it, so there you are. And so I was anxious for all these things to start happening, because I wanted to really make use of the 5 minutes, and time was going by. We were talking about Alpert, that was fine, but, more time going by. We talked about Diana, we talked about Dreyfus. We weren't getting anything accomplished, and why, the feeling was wonderful, but we weren't really getting down to business. So then Baba asked me if I'd read Stay With God. And I'm really starting to get irritated, although I say that, the action was happening so quickly, and Baba was so intense that I didn't realize these things, but now in retrospect I can sense them. So I was really getting irritated, like, well, why is he asking me about Stay With God? I can walk into the bookstore, pick out Stay With God, and read it any other time. I don't have to be in Baba's presence to talk about Stay With God. So why is he asking me that? So I said, no, Baba, I hadn't read Stay With God. And at that point, Baba had me turn around and meet Francis Brabazon. And I was aware that there were other people in the room, and even that made me a little bit uncomfortable, like, why are these other people in the room and all that. And then Baba said, read Stay With God. Gave me in direct order to read Stay With God. So then Baba continued, how did you sleep? Well, I felt, at least he's, giving some attention to me, which is great. Maybe it'll go on better from here. But I thought, who cares how I slept? I'm here. It isn't going to change anything. Whether I slept or not doesn't mean a darn bit of difference. Why is all this so superficial? And, why am I not getting the spiritual stuff? So I said, well, I slept pretty well, Baba. So then Baba said, did I have any questions? So at that point, my mind was a complete blank. I never believed for a minute that Baba would ask me if I had any questions. And it was that marvelous moment that you always read about in mysticism and Zen Buddhism of the blank mind. And, they'll say, no matter what you do to your mind, you can never make it blank because you'll always be conscious of your mind. But at that moment, by Baba's grace, I had a completely blank mind. So there is one way to have a blank mind, and that's because of Baba's grace. And it was a marvelous feeling, which lasted for an instant, but it was a feeling of complete freedom. If you're not conscious of your mind, it's a very wonderful feeling. At least it was to me. But it didn't last. And then I realized, I did have something for Baba. So I pulled out this poem, and each step of the way, Baba's teaching me things. And, every single thing upsetting my expectations and completely turning me upside down. And he was having a ball. I mean, he gets a big kick out of this. I was really wrestling and squirming and all this, but he was having a ball, just having a lot of fun with me. So I pulled out this piece of paper, and I thought, well, I wasn't going to read it to him. I'd just hand it to him, and he could read it before I went to bed or something, this poem, and it was nice. And then Baba said, no, he says, read it out. And Baba really saying, don't be shy, don't be nervous. We like you, we want to hear what you have to say. You don't have the attitude that we're not interested. We are interested, so let's hear it. So, all right. So I read this poem, and went something like, ignorance of you is despair, knowledge of you is hope, love of you is happiness, service to you is nobility or dignity, but obedience to you is bliss. Baba liked the last line, and it goes like that, and Eruch says, Baba liked the last line particularly, and Francis was back there cheering. And so I thought, well, great. Then Baba says, well, what are your plans? I said, well, I was going back to the States and probably go back to school. And Baba says, that's good. And I said, immediately, I've got a ticket on the 3 o'clock train, and then I'm going back to Bombay and all this. And then Baba looks at me and goes like this, don't miss your train. And all that business about punctuality came to a head. And it's been said many times, but Baba just showed me one more time that he's very particular about time and very particular about punctuality. He gave the Mandalay umpteen lessons on punctuality. And, of course, as God, he has to be. Everything in the universe has to have proper timing. The seasons have their timing, and the human body has its timing, and, the day has its timing, and planting seeds has its timing. Everything. God, of course, is very concerned with time, even though in his beyond state he's beyond it, but he's very conscious of time, and the attitude that, well, I'm a mystic so I don't care about time, is not the attitude that Baba has, and not the attitude he wants in his lovers. It's very important to be punctual and to be responsible. And but Baba was giving me another lesson, which is I was enjoying myself so much, and I liked the mandali so much, that I thought, well, why bother with those plans? I can always do away with those, and I can just hang around. The mandali are great. I may not get to see Baba, but I'll just hang around India. Baba giving me the definite message, no. You got to go back. You have your work. I have mine, and your place is not here. So, there are so many thousand lessons crammed into a few minutes, because when you are in the presence of Baba, you are transparent. And when you get to know somebody on the human level, you have to go through so many emotions and interrelationships and words and experiences to really get down to be open with them and trust them and know them. But with Baba, he dispenses with all that in a flash, and he gets down to who you are and what you need, and he can wind you up for 700 years or 2,000 years or whatever he wants in 5 minutes. And there was no doubt that he did that. So then it looked, well, like this is the end of the interview. Bob asked me what were my plans. He likes them, and he's already got me thinking of going home. So, Bob seemed to be winding up the interview, and Bob had me stand up and had Jaws stand up. And Bob then said, well, you have nice height. And so I thought, I'd given up sort of that, hoping that Baba would tell me anything spiritual or give me any plans for my life or help me make any major decisions. And I decided, well, it's not going to happen, so I'll just relax and I'll enjoy it while it lasts. And so Baba said, you have nice height. So I thought, this is really corny. What has my height got to do with anything? It sounds like, reminded me of when I was a kid and my mother would be having people over to play bridge, and I'd walk in, and some lady would say to my mother, my, your son is really growing up, isn't he? A tall young lad, and I would all... So I thought, this is really corny. Why is he saying that? Well, Baba, of course, was always cheerful, and the ways of love are not necessarily big and heavy and cosmic. Often finding something nice to say about somebody is loving. It's a way of making conversation. It's a way of making them feel happy. And the way of love is full of millions of small, light, pleasant, happy remarks that one makes to other people. And Baba was a master at that. And he was simply giving me an illustration that to love someone, you don't necessarily have to lay something really heavy on them. You can say that you enjoyed their cooking, or that their house is nicely decorated, or that they have a nice dress on, or that you liked their haircut, or it's a nice shirt, or something like that. There are a million things we could think of which are all loving and which are all thoughtful and pleasant and uplifting. And Baba was a master of those, and he was simply showing me that the ways of love are full of these kinds of thoughts and feelings, as well as devotion to the master and cosmic concerns and all this. And then Baba said, well, you're a tall American and Jal is short, and it will be quite a sight. It'll be funny for the Indians to see the tall American and the short Indian, walking around town, because I want Jal to show you around. And then Brabazon said, that's the long and the short of it, Baba. And oh no, he even likes corny humor. And then Baba did something really interesting. He said, well, Jal is so short because his growth is stunted. So I thought, well, this is the height of sarcasm, because Baba's God, so he stunts this guy's growth, and as God. Now he stands him up in front of himself, and he makes fun of him. Now, if that isn't the height of sarcasm, I don't know what is. To stunt somebody's growth when you have the power to do that when you're God, and then to laugh at him, in front of other people. And it seemed, well, Baba was showing me a couple of things. One is, he said that with tremendous love. There was this wave of love in the room, and Baba was showing me a lesson because I'd had a very sarcastic tendency in me, and Baba was saying, it isn't so much the sarcasm that is a problem. It's the lack of love. If you make a sarcastic remark to somebody and there's no love in it, you hurt that person. But you can make any kind of remark you want where you communicate love and where the other person knows that you love them. And this is true when you see really good friends who have been friends for years, and they know and trust each other and know that they love each other. They can call each other any name in the book and do anything they want with each other, because there's a feeling of comfortableness and warmth and love between them. They have that rapport. And Baba's showing me this. You don't have to give up sarcasm or that kind of humor, but the important thing is that whatever you do with love. And there was another wonderful thing that Baba was doing, which is like, of course Baba's known Jal all his life. They're brothers. And this is sort of kind of family humor. And Baba was, instead of making a big speech and a to-do of saying, welcome to the family, he was saying, we share our humor, and this is a way of sharing our life, and we're including you. Well, welcome to the family. So then, after I had completely given up any thoughts and hopes of anything serious happening, I just thought I would just relax and see what happened. Baba said, looked at me and he said, what you are looking for is God. And that kind of stunned me, because I thought, well, I didn't think I was looking for God. God's too big and enormous for me to look for. I'm not really looking for God. I was looking for a guru, and I was looking for happiness, something sort of more on my level. And, Baba clarified the goal, just as he says in all his books. We're all going back to the goal, and we're all seeking God. We come from God, and we're going to God. And if you want to drive your car correctly, it's important at least to know that you're going from And of course, what Baba was saying is not that I shouldn't think of him or care about him or love him, but that, as he has said for ages in other avataric forms and in this one, the kingdom of heaven is inside, your happiness, your real self is within you, and by thinking about him and by loving him right where you are, in California or New York or Pennsylvania or Florida, in that you will find God within you. And your idea that somehow you have to be physically here with me while I'm in the body and travel around with me and eat with me and have me tell you what to do, that's not what you're looking for, and that's not the way you'll find what you're looking for. So, Baba setting me up and making it clear that not only it wasn't my karma to have a life with him physically or the master physically, but that I really didn't need that, and that I was to get in touch with the Baba inside me and not the physical Baba that was in Pune at that time. So then Baba said, and you should remember that God is in everyone and everything. And Baba at this point is very careful to be balanced. Doesn't want to leave me with the impression, well, Baba told me God was inside me, so I guess I better go to a monastery or in my study and think about him and read about him and say his name, and I won't care about anything else or anyone else and sort of become very self-centered. Baba was saying, I am in everyone and in everything. And that's really important. In every person we meet and every activity, Baba is there. And it's important always to remember that he's there and to act as if we are always in his presence, because we are always in his presence, and to remember that everyone is his child and he's in everyone, and to relate to them that way. And then the third thing Baba said is, if you are true to the last line of your poem, you will one day see me as I really am. And that kind of floored me too, because I didn't have any hopes or thoughts or dreams of seeing him as he really am. But what Baba was saying is that you may come to me because you're lonely, or because you want meaning in your life, or because you want love, or because you want direction. But once you do come to me for whatever you think is the motive, you don't realize what a wonderful catch you've got, because by loving me and hanging on to me, I'll take you all the way. And I'll take you to places that are so wonderful, you don't even have the capacity to dream about them. And in that moment, I became aware of something inside me that, for a moment, which I've never experienced except in Baba's presence, that was so beautiful and so peaceful and so loving that it was exotic. It was Shangri-La. It was the Holy Grail, or everything that anybody has ever searched for. That was it. And it was such a feeling of happiness and peace that really would have been worth anything. I mean, that was the most precious substance that there was in the world, this happiness, this peace that Baba made me aware of, and just giving me a little glimmer. When I say, you will one day see me as I really am, I mean it, and there are valleys and mountains and Shangri-Las and utopias that I know of and I can take you to that you haven't even dreamed of, and they are really beautiful. So stick with me and I'll take you to the right places. And that was it. That 30 seconds of spiritual insight was all that Baba gave me, all he felt that I needed, or all he felt that I could ever understand. And Baba called me over, he embraced me once again. I went around and saw the town with Jal, went back. That was April 15, 1966, and it took, I told you I'd tell you the joke that Baba has this great sense of humor. You know, why April 15? Why April 15? Well, it turned out that I became a lawyer, and in law school, although I don't do a lot of it now, I took a lot of courses in tax law, and of course April 15 is, the D-Day for the return of taxes. And so for a lot of people, this can be the dread day, but for me, April 15 will always be a divine day. And it's this Baba's way of just planting a little humor in there and a little fun. And it took me about 8 years to get that joke. And God knows how long it'll take me to catch a lot of the other jokes that he put in there, because it's taken me years and years even to begin to figure out a lot of the things that I've been telling you tonight. I mean, they weren't things that I came back to the States with saying, well, this is what Baba did. They were things that I grew into, and that's, Baba's there, and he's infinite, and he's planted the seeds for all of us, and they'll blossom inside us as we're ready to have them blossom. But he's given us everything we ever need if we want to grow up enough to be worthy of it. I think I know another thing from seeing Baba, that he's always here. The love, the wisdom, the joy, the courage, the security that he gives is always here, and it's always inside us, because the kind of love that Baba is and the kind of being that he is indestructible and eternal. And really, when you know love, you know Baba, and when you know Baba, you know love. They're inseparable. And the memory that I take out of that room will always be a memory that God is love, that is his nature, and that everything in that room swam with love and was immersed in love, because that's who God is. And if we ever became fully conscious of God right here and now, we would know that everything is love. And that kind of love can never die with the body of the avatar. It's always here, and it's always available. And it's always available to us just by doing what he says. And that's exactly Baba's point about, if you're true to the last line of your poem, obedience to you is bliss. If you do what I say, if you really do what I say, you'll experience God. You'll see me as I really am. But of course, how many of us can really do what he says? That's a lot easier to say than to do. But the point is, there's no doubt. Baba didn't say that as a word or even as a promise. He just said it as a fact. If you do what I say, you will see God as he really is. It's good to know. I think the feeling that I have for what Baba did has grown within me, and it's given me the increasing conviction that it's possible to grow closer to Baba and to grow closer in love to Baba, wherever you are, whatever you happen to be doing, because he's always here and always inside us at every moment. Jai Baba.